This radio show is a paid placement. Welcome to Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes. I'm Mark Elliott. Mindy McIntosh, the founder and president of McIntosh and Associates. Nolan McIntosh will help you with your market investments. Are you taking too much risk in your portfolio? Not enough risk? Or the right amount? That's one of the big questions going into retirement these days. And the team at McIntosh and Associates certainly here to help guide you along this path. Mindy started this company in 2004. So they've had a lot of chances to sit down with people and hear about their hopes and dreams for retirement. And that's really where it all starts. The Dream Focused Wealth Plan. It's a discovery meeting. What are you going to do? How are you going to spend your time? Those kind of things. And we look at your finances because we do have to analyze where you are. How much do you need? What are you going to do? How are you going to spend your time? Then they come up with a solution. Then they implement the plan, the strategy. And you guys are deciding this together. And then, of course, once you put the Dream Focused Wealth Plan in place, it's not just written in stone and good luck to you. I'll never see you again. No, that's not how it works. I mean, this is a 20, 30-plus year relationship because things change in our lives all the time. So the plan will be changing as well. If you'd like to learn more, it's 877-222-8849, 877-222-8849. And then, of course, you want to go to the website. There's a lot of information there. We're going to talk about that in our final segment about the website, wealthmichigan.com, wealthmichigan.com. All right, Mindy, the Fed and the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, they've been doing a lot of moving around of stuff, probably since the 08 came out of the Great Recession in March of 09, then went on the longest bull run in Wall Street history. And they've been manipulating interest rates. Inflation has been very low. Last year, inflation popped up. Now inflation is still a factor, certainly, but now interest rates are going to start to rise, and their next meeting is in March for the Federal Reserve, and they said we're going to raise probably 0.25%. And the idea was last year that they'd probably do it once or twice in 2022, once or twice in 2023, once or twice in 2024. Now they're talking about doing it like 7 times. They have 7 meetings. They meet in March, May, June, July, September, November, and December, and they have talked about raising the interest rates at every one of those meetings to try to get it around 3% maybe by the end of the year, the interest rate level. How does that affect us? Mindy, what's your thoughts on the rising interest rate environment that looks like we're going to be in?
Well, it's all, very realistic and coming. We saw very low interest rates. We saw the housing market just booming, right? So if you were selling a home as of recent, and even still currently, it was such a buyer's market with the low interest rate environment. As we see changes, I always reflect back to what we see historically happening back in 1980. We're nowhere near those high interest rates. They hit an all-time high of like over 18%. So we're not there. But when we see inflation, it's really nice to put a pen to paper. So when we're working with, clients, we really take a look at, this is actually some items to take a look at for your future of just what they're spending today versus with the effect of inflation over time on, what if they're even a situation to have a larger home right now, kids moved out of the house, maybe they're done with college, getting closer to retirement age, so now they want to downsize. And how are they looking to fund that? Do they want to have a mortgage again? What could interest rates look like if that's 2 to 5 years on the horizon? Or even just the normal cost of goods and gasoline and your heat bill. And so as we take a look at that, sometimes we are walking clients through, they might have to work a little longer. Or sometimes we're making sure that in their what's called Dream Focused Wealth Plan that we help folks with here, we don't want to have too much risk or too much safety. We want to make sure that we have a nice, even keel, balanced, holistic plan to look at when we see these bumps in the road, whether it's inflation or taxes or what have you, how to alter and make adjustments very quickly and to be able to navigate with these consumers. So it's definitely here to come. I think it's here to stay too longer than what folks might realize as we see inflation start to make that change. And just let's, walk through that path together. And, call us here at the office at 877-222-8849. We'd be happy to start a plan and really take a look at how could this year affect you and what are your next steps.
And, Nolan, the low interest rate environment we've been in for over a decade, that has certainly been a challenge for seniors and savers. Seniors, because there's nowhere really to put your money to make it, get a great return. Like Mindy mentioned, back in 1981, if you wanted a mortgage on your house, it was 18.63%. Well, CDs were up in that area too. They weren't maybe that high, but they were 14, 15%. So my grandparents retiring in the 70s could put money into a CD, and they'd have pensions. They would have their pension. They would also have Social Security, and then they'd have high interest rates at the bank. Just put money in a CD. It was pretty easy to create income at that time. So really, for retirees that you work with at McIntosh and Associates, Nolan, I would think inflation is a challenge because things are going to cost more, obviously. But interest rates going up might give them a place to put some money in a very safe situation to make some money. But we're not there yet, obviously. I don't think you can put money in a CD right now and you're going to be beating inflation, are you?
No, and that's the issue is that right now current environment is still where it's at. I mean, talk is talk, and it's, even if they move it up a 0.25%, I don't think you're going to necessarily see double-digit return on a CD or anything of that nature. Not even close, right? Might be lucky if you get 1% out of it. So that's the challenge we have, is that we have to make sure that we're at least hedging inflation. That's why Mindy and I talk about we got to make sure that we're feathering the edge of not having too much in risk and not too much in safety. Because the issue is if we have one to the other, then we're not hedging inflation up to buy enough, and we're obviously, if we're doing what we're kind of seeing, market volatility, which it does, obviously ebbs and flows, then that's not good either, because then obviously if you're needing that for income and you're drawing it down on the principal, well, that's not going to last as long. So that's why we need to have a holistic approach on that. And the current environment, the problem is that inflation, is well over 7%. They're going to come, out with some of these different reports and things of that nature, coming weeks and this year. And if interest rates don't calm down inflation, again, inflation's a good thing. We want about a 3% inflationary rate, so our companies can obviously grow things of that nature, and so that's why we need that regular inflationary rate. But when we're too high, that creates some issues, obviously, for an economy that's too high. And the problem is if we don't do something now, my concern is that the inflation is going to continue to run, and then all of a sudden what we're going to see is kind of what we saw back in the 80s. So we're definitely navigating this and talking with clients and making sure that we're all on the same page. But really the biggest thing is making sure that we have a holistic approach. That way we have a steady stream of income that's obviously creating some inflationary hedges there, and then obviously in the market we're making sure that we're doing things risk-wise in case that interest rate does create some issues there in the market.
Mindy, you think about, as Nolan and you have talked about, inflation also being a factor. Well, interest rates is interesting to a degree for our country's debt. Anybody can go to usdebtclock.org and look at all those numbers. There's some in green, which is good. There's a whole bunch in red, and now we're over $30 trillion in debt as a nation. Does this have any effect on us? And then inflation, because what happens if inflation gets higher, people then stop buying stuff, and then you end up with stagflation. So I gave you a little two-parter. Nolan, if you'd like to help Mindy answer the question, you certainly can. But I guess, Mindy, your thought on the country's debt, over $30 trillion, and how rising interest rates would affect that, if at all. And then if we get higher inflation, stagnation gets in where people say, well, I'm not buying anything right now. I can't afford to. And then everything kind of shuts down. That's where we don't want to get.
You're right. And as we take a look at the debt load, and it just keeps getting larger, and when we're working with so many retirees, we see some of that, having impacts on, yes, there's cost of living adjustments with Social Security, but what's happening with, Medicare, and specifically Medicare Part B premiums. So I'm always tying in that financial side with healthcare and taking a look at some of the debt load and where all of us as consumers and tax dollars, where it's going to continue to come from. And then how do we pave the way for these young and upcoming children in the world? So when we take a look at the debt load ratio and then we take a look at interest rates environments, I usually like to use some, vehicles for clients, especially if we do see, some changes coming here. I want to make sure that folks are having some protection, right? So I kind of specialize in a protection side here and making sure that we can try to hedge inflation and look for, different things that are happening to hedge volatility and such. So when we take a look at that, we have options in, funding vehicles, even through a fixed indexed annuity to help folks to hedge the downside risk so we can mitigate risk, but really trying to look at how do we keep up with the increasing cost of healthcare, our cost of living adjustments we might see. What about as inflation goes up, or interest rates and market volatility? So how do we sustain long-term, giving whether it's guaranteed income, making sure that we're outperforming obviously any CD rate and such? How are we going to maintain and stay over and above this inflationary number and continue to do it year after year? And it's a great way to help pay for some healthcare costs in retirement, especially as we see those raised for seniors. It's a good way too to make sure that we don't have any market component. So that's our kind of a safe bucket of funds for folks to be able to utilize. And I just think it gives them the peace of mind to be able to do several different things with looking at taxes, inflation, healthcare, and peace of mind within using that vehicle as a part of their retirement plan.
When you think about inflation, you think about interest rates, you think about your retirement. How are you going to make sure that your money will last you 20, 30 plus years in retirement? You need a plan. And at McIntosh and Associates, you sit down with Nolan and Mindy. It's about the Dream Focused Wealth Plan, a discovery meeting, just finding out about you. Can they help you? Then an analysis of your situation, a solution, implementation of the plan, but it doesn't stop there because we're trying to help you get through retirement. So there's a lot of moving parts. If you have any questions, 877-222-8849. Great time to get started. If you've been thinking about it, you got some concerns, why not to talk to a team that actually works in the retirement world like McIntosh and Associates? 877-222-8849. No cost, no obligation, no pressure. 877-222-8849. We're just getting started with Mindy and Nolan. We're back with more of Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes right after this.
Who will help you get there? Wherever you want to go and whatever you want to do in retirement, McIntosh and Associates can help you get there. You do the dreaming, they do the planning. It's your retirement, but you need a guide. As you approach retirement, McIntosh and Associates can make sure you're on the path to retire on your terms. And once you're retired, they'll help you stay on course. Think of it as a roadmap for your retirement. The team at McIntosh and Associates wants you to have the retirement you've worked so hard for. Come in and meet with them today. They'll help you create a retirement roadmap that's tailored to your dreams, your lifestyle, and long-term financial goals. Call today at 877-222-8849 and schedule a visit. Call 877-222-8849. That's 877-222-8849. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Get started today to develop your own dream-focused wealth plan with the team at McIntosh and Associates. Schedule a complimentary first visit today. Call 877-222-8849.
Glad you're with us today for Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes. Mindy, the founder and president, started the company in 2004, a 2002 Michigan State grad. Nolan, he joined the company in 2018 because he's a genius, right? He's got a master's, he's got a doctorate in physical therapy, worked in the PT and athletic training world before joining Mindy and her team. And, of course, they have 3 daughters. But, you know, if you don't feel well, if you have some illness, no, not illness, I don't think that's the PT world. If you have some soreness, you come in, talk about retirement. Nolan can give you some exercises to help you. It's all good. It's all good. 877-222-8849, 877-222-8849. Now, I know you guys have heard this. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And so I think a lot of people, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mindy, but I think people really get caught up, and this kind of goes back to those, I think it was ING, there were a bunch of companies that ran commercials, that's your number. Really, that's your number? Yeah, that's my number. You know, they walk around the backyard with their numbers, or they go to the board and go line up where you think you need to get to be able to retire. And people get caught up on the number. Here's the number I need before I can retire. So a lot of times people won't even come and see you till they get close enough to their number to think it's worthwhile, when actually their number may not really have any real bearing on their situation. How do you look at that part of trying to figure out, are we in the right place or not to be able to retire? Everybody probably does have a number, I suppose.
Some try to reach a particular number that they think is good, or they hear that their friends say, oh, I need $1 million to retire. Oh, now that's not enough. Oh, I need 4% rates of return. Oh, that's no longer realistic. What's really important is if we actually sit down, run through a discovery, walk through where are your expenses coming from currently, what are you looking to do when you retire, or if you're already retired, are you now going to travel, take care of grandchildren, what does your health look like? We take a look at all of that, what you're looking to do, what your hobbies are, what income's coming in. We then take a look at what investments do you currently have, how are they performing? Are you sitting on a lot of cash in the bank or CD rates that are underperforming, and now you're not hedging inflation? So how do we manage and make an update there to make sure that your money that you worked so hard for is working for you? And so everyone's situation is different, which is why it's so important that we need to get, an income analysis and take a look at even your assets. Because if you have, either too much market risk or too many funds that aren't performing to be able to keep up with today's environment, they need to be adjusted. So I encourage all of you to either go to our website at wealthmichigan.com or call our office here at 877-222-8849. And let's really find out, what is your number? It's unique to you, and let's go ahead and custom design that together.
Yeah, because everybody's situation is different, as you pointed out, Mindy, and it's really interesting, I think, because that was kind of the old thing, that I think the kind of the wives' tale, if you will. Hey, you need $1 million to retire. Well, that's not enough. For others, that's more than enough. It just depends on your specific situation. And Nolan, you think about it. While we're working, we're putting money away. We're saving, right? We're saving in the 401ks, IRAs, whatever, wherever it is. We're saving for retirement because we're trying to get to a goal where we can retire someday. Once we retire, though, now it's about income. We've got to be able, it's not about the rate of return so much anymore in retirement as it is about the rate of income. How much income do we need? Is it that $10,000 or $15,000 that Mindy was talking about, or is it the $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000? That makes a big difference. But creating income is a big part, I would think, of the Dream Focused Wealth Plan. Where's your income going to come from? How do we replace your paychecks?
Yeah, exactly. And there's different income streams. So a lot of people, just think of Social Security as income. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But, these days and ages, most people are not, my dad, my grandpa retired from GM and they get a healthy pension. Even Dow here, in our local town here, they have now done away with their pension, and a lot of people were surviving on a very, very healthy pension from Dow. So now it's created some onus on the investor themselves on how do we create a pension. And so that's where, Mindy and I get together, and we've had this question before of how do you guys disseminate all this information and then figure out where's going where? And we're like, well, we solve for income. That's number one. We need to solve for your daily needs. I think that's important. And then after that, we figure out what's our wants. And that's where sometimes our investment strategies come in and say, okay, this is what we're going to use, from that perspective to say you want a new car or maybe a second home or travel the world, wherever that may be. And so that's the key there, is to satisfy income first. Then, we get into the Dream Focused Wealth Plan part of that. So that way we know, where the rest of that income is going to come from. And that's probably going to come from possibly an investment stream. So, and the other thing is it's not what you get to keep, we're looking at from a tax strategy standpoint too. So even withdrawal orders, people don't even think about that. Sometimes we think about rates of return and we completely don't look at, what does a withdrawal order do for us? And so that's the biggest thing that we look at a lot of times too, is that, if we draw from something that's taxed differently than something that, is non-taxable, maybe we want to wait on those non-taxable, investments to draw from before we start, looking at those. And so that's the key, is even withdrawal orders. And then obviously, inflationary rates, making sure we're looking at those. And again, making sure we're meeting the risk of what the client needs. And so that's really one of those things that it's not difficult for Mindy and I, because this is what we do. And so we like to, ask people, how many times do you get to be work optional or retire? And they say, well, once. And so it's not like you can fall off the bike and get back on it again. So, usually we need a financial professional to help us to be able to figure through that. And so a lot of times, people want to come in, like you said, right before retirement or in retirement. Why don't we want to start planning way before that, so that we have a very clear concept of what's supposed to be happening and where we're going as far as a goal goes? And goals are important, not only just for, obviously maybe physical or emotional help, but also financially we need to have goals. So that way we are all on the same page, and having a partner to do that with you is more important. It keeps, number one, accountability, and number two, it helps us to keep refocusing on, if somebody's watching things for us and helping us through that plan, then you're going to be a lot more confident to be able to go through life together. And that's the biggest thing that Mindy and I like to do, is that partnership with people.
Mindy, talk a little bit about, because Nolan brought up the pensions, and you started the company in 2004. And I would think at that point, there were still some pensions around, and we're seeing less and less all the time, certainly. But I would think in the last 3, 4, 5, maybe the last 8 years, I don't know, you would certainly know more than I, but the old pension buyouts, certainly a lot of companies going, well, wait a minute, it was fine when somebody would retire at 65, pass away at 72, but now they're retiring at 65 and they're working, they're living till 85, till 90. Our pensions can't last that long so we're giving people the option of a buyout. How do you help people in that regard? Because more and more companies, especially if you had a pension, then they go, you know what, we'd just as soon buy you out on this. That's not an easy decision either, I would think.
So a lot of folks are, not sure what to do, and they see these different options for, some that still have the opportunity to take a life annuity with a pension, and they can pick and choose percentages to a spouse, or they have an option to do a lump sum. And some are confused. Lump sum, am I going to pay taxes on all this? Does it go to my bank? Is this just what I used to live on? So, most times what we're doing, depending on the client situation, is we can actually utilize the lump sum option. So instead of being a pension that they're receiving from the company, is they can actually roll that over into their own IRA. By rolling it over into their own IRA, maybe we need income right away. Maybe we strategize, as Nolan has already talked about, what is their withdrawal strategy order, and how do we make sure that it's a conservative measure and a conservative model to still be getting growth inside of that position, but actually to have a good income that we can create through an annuity and give them guaranteed income throughout their lifetime that can actually increase. So it can provide an increasing income if they need it. If they don't need the income and we're already looking at, trying to plan to keep their tax rate down, we can let it defer and just let it stay deferred, let it allocate, let it accumulate until a further date we want income. Plus, then that way, maybe it's funds that person never needs. Maybe they spend it all and continue to keep the income even when the balance draws to zero, or maybe they don't ever use it and it passes on to loved ones, but it gives them a lot more flexibility, and then they're in the driver's seat for how we're actually making that plan of action come into play to make sure that they can rely on that, and we just walk through that, journey and walk through those roads together as we do our, reviews.
So, final question. Mindy, I'll go to you on this one, and that is, when people come in to sit down with you and maybe go through that Dream Focus Wealth Plan process, there are certainly some signs that you're like, boy, we can really help them. Or they've done a really good job. They don't need a lot of help, but I think we can help them create the plan because they've really kind of won the game. We can put things in place pretty simply here. Others need a little bit more guidance. What are some signs that we really should be thinking about sitting down with a team like McIntosh and Associates to discuss our retirement?
A lot of things we're seeing is, folks are looking at, hey, are we on the right track? Or we really haven't met with anyone yet to have a plan. And we're looking to retire in 2 years or 4 years or 6 months from now. What do we need to do? So a lot of times we're seeing that maybe we can help them today reallocate their 401k better to be more suitable, let's say, to what they're looking to do in their own risk environment. So how do we take a look at that? Other folks have, funds that are sitting in the bank or in the market and really doing nothing for them, or too heavy and all in one particular space, and they don't realize it. And sometimes it can just be like a client we had in just recently, and it's putting everything together. So, there was accounts scattered amongst different positions. They weren't sure of the funds that were sitting there, how they'd been participating, what they were contributing to. So a lot of times we're helping people to contribute to their tax-free element right now instead of the pre-tax. And then, oh my goodness, what if they're in 80% risk right now? Well, let's decrease some of that risk, create that income side to pay for health care and create their pension-like income now, so we can set the stage now by making sure their allocation balance is right, taking a look at risk. Sometimes it's increasing or decreasing. Where's their future income going to come from? And how does healthcare play a role in that? So important on the Dream Focus Wealth Plan. Let's have a plan. Let's get it designed and continue to monitor it as we see changes happen in the environment. This is what we do each day, and we would love to, continue to serve folks where they don't have to worry about some of the questions of, folks come in, well, I'm not sure what to ask, and how would we know, what needs to be changed later. That's what we're here to help you with. So call our office at 877-222-8849.
So I think we all get it. Retirement is not a sprint, it's a marathon. The challenge with the marathon of retirement is you don't really know where the finish line is. We're going to talk about that. And when we come back, again, the number 877-222-8849 if you'd like to talk with the team at McIntosh and Associates about your situation. Mindy and Nolan back right after this.
Of all the questions you get asked every day, this is one you shouldn't ignore. How much money in your 401k or IRA is actually yours? Not what its current value is, but how much of it will end up in your pocket, not the government's. Remember, you still might owe taxes on that money. Make sure you aren't overpaying. Keep every dollar you're entitled to. Look, I know it's confusing, it's complicated, and it's definitely not fun. That's why at McIntosh & Associates, we work with tax professionals to help make sure you aren't paying more in taxes than your fair share. It's your money. You deserve to know what's at stake. Call our team at McIntosh & Associates today. Get started. 877-222-8849. 877-222-8849. Don't do the IRS any favors. 877-222-8849. Firm offers insurance services and may not give tax advice. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Schedule your complimentary first visit with the Macintoshes right now. Call 877-222-8849. That's 877-222-8849.
Welcome back to Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes, Mindy McIntosh, Nolan McIntosh. I'm Mark Elliott. Glad you're with us. You can always find out more about the team at McIntosh & Associates. A lot of great information on the website. That is wealthmichigan.com, wealthmichigan.com. You know, I think we all get it. Retirement is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. The challenge is we don't know where our finish line is when we get into retirement. And typically, Nolan, we're living longer than any generation before us, and there's really no telling how long we're actually going to be here. Are your clients at McIntosh & Associates still concerned about, and maybe once they have the Dream Focused Wealth Plan in place, they're not as concerned, but maybe when they come in for the first time, is one of their main concerns about running out of money before they run out of life?
Yeah, I think that's the only concern. I mean, that's what we probably hear all the time. It's just, it's so funny that, people just they worry about the most, but they worry about a 2-week vacation plan than they would their entire life savings that they're using to try and get to the next phase of life. So it's very interesting that they worry a lot about if they're going to run out of money, but they really don't take the time to plan for it. So for us, that's the important thing is that, so we say we can't see the finish line, but we can at least give you a good idea of what it looks like. And that's why it's so important that when we sit down with clients, we are as detailed as possible as we can be for us to be able to help them plan. And so it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I think I spend this much, or, I think I have this much coming in. Well, that's not a plan, that's a guess. So we really do want, marathoners, they train, right? They know what it looks like to be at the finish line. They visualize that. And so that's our job, is to create a vision so that way people, when they come in, they can visualize what that finish line looks like. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that running out of money is the biggest concern. So we help solve for that. We help them know that, we can get some guaranteed income into their portfolio. And then obviously, on the outside of that, looking at investments and saying, hey, from a risk tolerance standpoint, where do we need to be? And we just had a software program that we're using. It's not new to us as far as this, but they've upgraded it to where it actually gives us, what do we need as an average rate of return if there's some shortfall. So it's very interesting to see that, so that way clients can say, hey, this is what we're looking at futuristically. So that way we can obviously, again, look at that finish line. And again, it's not a sprint. You're right. Very few people can go out there and get lucky and say, hey, I won the lottery, and now it's a sprint, right? Because they've won all that money. But, for us, compounding interest is a time thing. You need time to have compounding interest on investments. You need time for those things to grow. And so that's why it is a marathon. But we like to help people walk through that at every phase of life. So it's one of those things that we always want to look at and make sure that, we're on the same path to make sure that they do make that finish line.
Minnie, John Lennon of the Beatles had a song called Beautiful Boy, and there was a line in it that said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And I was going to make Nolan sing that line, but I decided not to. So how do we plan for the additional challenges? Because there are a lot of things. You mentioned taxes, and there's healthcare. There are some challenges, though, that I don't know, we don't know our end date. We also don't know the challenges we might face in retirement.
You're right, we don't. And so, some of our business owners, even that, we're helping as they're bridging the gap to get into retirement, is we can set up tax plan all year round. So, a lot of folks just think of this time of the year as, oh, let's do our tax planning end of year, and taxes, let's start thinking about those, end of January. But realistically, a lot of times if we want to take a look at market volatility and take a little bit of risk off the table, as well as plan and prepare your own income in retirement, and take a look at how can we do so generally tax-free, and be able to utilize your own investments to serve your nature, whether it be income needing, to hedge taxes, to take a look at inflation, or even to look at, long-term care needs. So when we really take a look at that, a lot of things can be done, even through an indexing life side, to be able to fund continuously for, let's say, 5 years or 7 years, and to take a look at what then will happen in the future if you want to turn that into a pension-like option. Or, gosh, you were really smart to save a lot of taxes on that. Or maybe it's money you feel that you won't be using, and you want to leave it to your children or your grandchildren. That's a great way to pass a tax-free benefit to other loved ones. So if you want to see, gosh, what does this look like to me? What could the importance and what could my tax burden actually look like? And what are some changes that we could take during an ongoing, implementation working together? Go to our website, just have a visit with us, and take a look at wealthmichigan.com. And let's actually walk through the protocol of different opportunity zones for you.
And, of course, you can always call the team at McIntosh & Associates. There's no cost. There's no obligation. There's no pressure. There's no judgment either. Nolan's the only one that's never made a mistake. Minnie and I have. 877-222-8849 is the number, 877-222-8849. And, if you go back in time, just a few years ago, go to 2020 and think of the pandemic. And what we found was, holy cow, this emergency fund that people have been talking about, I guess it really is important. We need an emergency fund. We were laid off. We were furloughed. That emergency fund became very important. 2021, it seemed like we spent the whole year talking about taxes, because we know that the tax law from Trump's era is going to end December 31st of 2025. We revert back to 2017 rates and brackets in 2026. And the Biden administration is talking about raising taxes, certainly for the wealthy, which typically has a trickle-down effect on all of us, I would suppose. How important is an emergency fund? And in 2022, Nolan, what is your guess is going to be the big topic? Because I think the emergency fund was huge in 2020, taxes in 2021. Where are we now?
Yeah, and I think some of the statistics we have read is that some of these people that were getting stimulus, some of the stimulus packages, things of that nature, were actually saving some of it, which is good. But, it can be the other way, too. We want to have an emergency fund. There's no doubt about it. And Mindy and I are on the conservative side. We like about a 6-month buffer, whether it be, income or expenses, depending on what we have to look at what they're spending versus what's coming in. And sometimes you say 6 months worth of expenses. Sometimes you say 6 months worth of what they're earning at this point. So that's kind of our where we kind of go now. It depends on the clients, because some clients are spenders, some clients are savers. And so at the other end of that, if you're a saver and you're having too much in the bank, well, with inflation being as high as it is currently, well, now you're losing money on the bank money. So we don't want to have too much in the bank as well. So we definitely want that buffer in there. And it does depend. I mean, some people's spending is very habitual. It's just, we know as we get to know them as clients, things of that nature, so sometimes we sit down with them and say, hey, we want to get to know you and your spending habits first before we make any other recommendations. Because sometimes I'll come and say, hey, I want to, I got too much money in the bank and I need to, and we're like, well, let's look at this. I mean, let's see what's going in versus going out first before we do that, because we want to make sure we have that buffer. And typically we'll see those people that are putting money in the bank are a little more on the conservative side. So usually we have to create a holistic plan there so that we have some in safety and obviously some that's in the market. But it's one of those things that we definitely want some of those emergency funds, because we know that the cost of things is going up. And Mindy and I think from this perspective too, what if something happens like a power outage or something of that nature? It's always good to have a little bit of cash on hand, just because if there's something that's happening and you need to pay for something that you can't use because of the power outage or something of that nature, then you should have some cash on hand too. So our synopsis usually is around that 6-month buffer for those.
So, Mindy, a couple minutes left in this segment before we get to our final segment. And you think about all the moving parts that you guys deal with your clients at McIntosh & Associates for the retirement planning purposes, the Dream Focused Wealth Plan that you create. How in the world do we figure out whom we should sit down with and talk to about our retirement? Because I think a lot of people go, well, all financial advisors are the same. That's not the case, is it?
It's really not. And I think, some folks think of financial advisors as a place that you walk into the office, and whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you can go in and invest some money. Here, we're really focused on those that are in or nearing retirement. And I think our holistic vision, just what we're trying to incorporate is, if you think of a pie and the slices of a pie, we're trying to make sure we're looking at what's happening in your investment strategy, and mainly looking at, what is it looking like as you're approaching your retirement years, and then in retirement. We're then looking at income. How and when are we going to draw Social Security? How are we making your pension-like account work and manage for you with your assets? And what does that look like on your longevity, which would be long-term care? So we can look and implement then the long-term care or the health strategy, make sure that we are actually placing and setting in your Medicare plan as well. So we have to look at income with your Medicare plan as well as your health and longevity. And, on top of that, we want to look at what's happening with taxes and how can we be efficient with taxes for you down the road to make sure that's working inside of your circle and making the main focus of that your family. So a lot of places, you can't go to one spot where they can manage and help you with your health care and your wealth care to make sure that they're nurturing that relationship in one spot. So many folks, either referred here or we're working with them because it's convenient for them to be able to know that they have the peace of mind and the trust that we can help walk through both sides of that equation and make sure that all the, pieces of the pie just keep spinning in a nice wheel for them. So if this is you, or you're feeling like you need some help there, or just need a second set of eyes and to actually have another opinion on what's happening in your portfolio or what's happening in your journey, call us here at the office at 877-222-8849 and we'll set up a visit together.
Yeah, and there's no cost for this whatsoever. 877-222-8849. Mindy, Nolan, and the team at McIntosh and Associates are here to help you, but they just don't know if they can until they hear your situation. That's why it just starts with a phone call, 877-222-8849. Headed to our final segment with Mindy and Nolan of McIntosh and Associates. This is Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes. We're back right after this.
To learn more about the team at McIntosh and Associates, check out their website anytime at wealthmichigan.com.
Glad you're with us today for Wealth Michigan with the McIntoshes. Mindy McIntosh, the founder and president of McIntosh and Associates. Nolan McIntosh alongside as well. I'm Mark Elliott. And we mention the fact, Mindy, all the time that, hey, give us a call at 877-222-8849 if you'd like to find out where you are on your road to retirement. We can go through the dream-focused wealth plan with you. We can create that income plan, investment strategies, tax-efficient strategies, healthcare, long-term care, legacy and estate planning. What about Social Security? Well, that's a big decision that we have to make, and you can't look at Social Security by itself in a vacuum. You look at it with everything else. When does it make sense to take Social Security? Everybody's situation is a little bit different there. What about Medicare? Certainly big decisions to be made on that end as well. There's always moving targets, it seems, with all of these government plans. So we talk about that all the time. But we also say you can always go to the website, wealthmichigan.com, to find out more about us. So what's the website all about, Mindy?
So when you go to wealthmichigan.com, it's really nice. And we feel that it kind of gives you opportunity to really take a look and even get to know some of the team before you ever call or schedule a visit or stop by the office. And it does go through some of the different services that we talk about, resources, and how can we help you on your financial journey or on your healthcare or life insurance journey, and what that looks like to make sure that we're planning for your passions first. We do have some videos on here too. It talks a little bit about how your retirement is different and why it can't be about what you've heard is right or what's in the past. It's all about your particular situation. It'll give you a little bit, too, of history on our story and our family and my farming upbringing and things of that nature. And then you can walk through and see all of the team on here. You can see team photos. You can see how long folks have been here, how our team helps to encompass and work together to circle around you. We call it our family. There's also an About Us tab. So it'll talk about video format. So you can be cooking dinner, you can be doing some other things while you can actually hear a little bit about that. Or if you are a researcher and you kind of want to see what's happening in the news or in the media, you'll see just some different news feeds that we have out there about different topics that, the local stations had wanted to chat about. And then it'll talk about next steps. If you want to register for an upcoming event or even hear a prior radio show, you can do so. It has some client-facing features, too, so those that are clients can actually take a look at their accounts and such. But it just gives you a good spot to get a good feel for what our process is, how we handle clients here. And again, you're under no obligation to, once you have a visit, there's no cost to set a plan and there's no obligation to, continue to working together. So I encourage all of you to go to wealthmichigan.com, specifically take a look at, I feel, our services or our family page, just to get a good feel for who we are locally.
Yeah, and there's pictures on there, of our team, which is important to put a face to it, when you call in, things of that nature. But there's also other things, and when you become a client, there's access to things on our website that you can get to. And if you're listening to us on the radio now, we actually have past radio shows. You wanted to hear some of that on there as well. But it's done well, and it's easy to kind of navigate through that. But for us, the biggest thing is that we like to talk about is, particularly if not now, then when. It's one of these things that we have to put things into action. So it's one thing to look at our website. It's one thing to, hear us talk on the radio. But the only thing that's going to make a change in your dream focused wealth plan is you. You're the one that's going to have to make the difference. You're the one that's going to have to call in. You're the one that's going to have to come in and visit. We try as much as we can when you come in to make it feel comfortable, because this is one of these things. It's a big decision on who you're working with and making sure that you trust them and making sure that we're doing what's right for you. So that's the biggest thing, is to make sure that we make you as comfortable as possible going through this process with you, and making sure that, we're working alongside with you. That way we're not telling you what to do. We're just helping you, and as a partnership goes. And so really important that we do that action item and get you in the office and be able to talk with you, or do even a discovery phone meeting just to talk to us, to say who we are, see if it's a two-way street. We're interviewing you, you're interviewing us, to make sure that we could work together as a team, because that's how it works. And so even a simple discovery call might be all we need at first, and then once you feel comfortable, then you can come to the office and we can meet face-to-face. But again, wealthmichigan.com is the website to go to, or call us at 877-222-8849. And as we say, our slogan is to serve, so we'd love to be able to serve you here. The phone number is 877-222-8849.
McIntosh and Associates Incorporated is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC, AEWM. AEWM and McIntosh and Associates Incorporated are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. McIntosh and Associates Incorporated is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by McIntosh and Associates Incorporated.